All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to spend the last hour and a half or so of the day talking about user experience, starting off with frictionless biometrics. And to present to you today, I would like to introduce Teresa and Allyson from IDEMIA. And just a reminder for those online, please submit your questions if you have any in the Q&A box. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Christina. So good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here and co-present with Allyson here. So I would like you all to join me to welcome Allyson because this is her first industry conference and first time presenting. And so I pretty much throw her in the fire. Part of one of my motto is about increasing diversity in tech. And one thing I did was I basically submitted the presentation and then I decided, you know what, it's about UX and I have a very brilliant UX designer in the house. Might as well just drag her along and co-present with me and have her do all the work. So that's how it goes. We're going to talk about frictionless biometrics, how to roll it out. Originally, when we did this, we want to talk about a lot of time this misperception about biometrics, that it's just a token like any other, right? But it's not. Authentication with biometrics can come with a lot of baggage, and I think we saw some of the press article in the news, and it is a friction point. And so I wanted to talk about more about biometrics, a little bit of one-on-one, the tech aspect of it, because to roll it out, there's two aspects. You have the technology aspect of biometrics, and then you have the user experience side, the UX side of it. I would call non-technical side, even though I think the UX expert in the room would tell me UX is technical. But we're going to split that up. So I will take the first part, the algorithmic side, the biometric side, the science side of it, and then Allyson will talk about the UX side of it. So authentication, you have the intention. You want to authenticate, and the outcome, you got it, you've gone through, and you don't go through. And in the middle, it's all the other aspect of how this come into play. So what is biometrics? So some people tell me, should that be biometric or biometrics? So biometric is a science. It's spelled with an S, so it's singular with an S. Confusion, but that's what it is. And that you hear, or you have heard all kinds of different biometrics. You have heard voice recognition, DNA, ear recognition, and so forth, fingerprint, even heartbeat, and iris, not retina. So there's a difference between iris recognition and retina. Retina is the back of the eye, which is really creepy if you want to use that for authentication, very intrusive, or iris, which is the front of the eyes, where the color of your iris is. And then I have heard someone want to try to do older biometrics. Why not? But at the end of the day, it's three types of biometrics. You have biological, you have morphological, and you have behavioral. And you can use one of these to identify or authenticate, depends. And ultimately, there's a golden definition that I always go back to, because not all biometrics are equal. But what does it make them? How you delineate what is a better biometrics over the other? So Dr. Anil Jain did a very good paper back in 2004 in defining biometrics. So biometrics need to have four major characteristics. You need to be universal, means everybody needs to have it. Or the animal kingdom, everybody, the species need to have it. You need to be distinctive. And you have certain persistence and permanence. So it's not 100%. For example, your iris actually degrade. Your fingerprint evolve over lifetime. Your face change over lifetime. So it's not, I don't like the permanence term, but some people call it's permanent. I like the term persistent. The degree and the length of time your biometrics stay persistent make that biometrics more viable and better than the other biometrics. If you're going to rank the other biometrics I just talked to you earlier, it's like, for example, odor, your smell, well, it's not really persistent, so it's really short in time. Your DNA probably a bit more persistent than permanence than your other biometrics. And of course, you have to collect it. So the collectability, it's to be able to capture it, makes one biometric easier than the other. So when you're deploying your authentication system, you need to take these into account and choose the one that's most suitable. So of course, right now, the most common one is fingerprint and face. They are then shortly followed with iris. But there are other biometrics that I have seen used in deploy in identification or authentication system. Some even talk about heartbeat because you can carry it with your wearable. And ultimately, after you have all this, you can capture, detect, capture, analyze, and match. Right? That's I would say, the machine piece of it. And to match it to find your uniqueness or help individualize you out of the bunch. So in authentication, in the MFA world, the basic trifecta was what you know, what you have, and what you are. Of course, now the MFA have extended and have added other signal. But these are the three main trifecta. And of course, something you are is where the biometric comes in, just to put in the context in a couple minutes. OK, so one thing I do want to talk about is the passive and active liveness. It's a growing field in biometric and the challenges in research in biometrics is to how to make sure that we can either actively we challenge response to make sure that the sample come in from a live person or passively in the background from the user experience standpoint. And then behavioral biometrics, it's what right now I would say the next sort of the, we call the soft biometric in a way. It's how we can use that to do authentication in the continuous authentication technology context. All right, so friction point. So biometrics cause friction. No doubt about it. I'm born in the biometric space, but one thing is reaching frictionless biometric is ideal. It's a goal. Can you really reach it? Probably not, but the more intentional about it, the better, because there are many, I would say, cause for friction. These are just a few of them. And you heard about them probably in the news quite a bit. Out of all this, we're gonna focus on accuracy, bit bias, and accessibility, right, where the UX come in. So those are, I would say, the major friction point. So when you roll out frictionless biometrics, I would say frictionless will probably not 100%. But you can at least focus on the major one or be cognizant of these major challenges. So accuracy. How many mathematicians in the room? How many of you have done statistic? Oh, Mike. So call me out if I do this wrong. Mike, thank you. So accuracy. In my world, accuracy, I always tell people, think of it as how it's 1 minus error. So meaning, I will look at the one, the error, not at the one, because you're going to always make errors. Biometric is not perfect. It's not 100% proof. You will not get 100% accurate performances. You will not. And I come from a biometric company, so take my word for it. So the whole point is you want an algorithm to do least error possible, basically. So you're closer to 1, the 100%. So look at reverse way. And there are many ways of measuring accuracy, and these are just some of the measurements we would do in in the biometric world, users, implementer probably don't care, but you want to care when you're selecting and picking your biometrics. Because if you are taking a biometrics that have a very high FAR, the false upset, then you are making a lot of, I would say, illegal, unauthorized login. Basically, your sister can log in for you, or your daughter log in instead of you, right? That's false upset. So it does matter in a way that you want to really pick a biometrics that can really balance this error rate, right? I can do 1 hour presentation on accuracies, which I won't. And so with that in mind, they are lucky for you. NIST has been evaluating biometrics technology vendor for 20 years after September 11. So after September 11, Congress has passed a regulation, act to mandate NIST to evaluate biometrics. That's what implemented the entry-exit system in the first one ever, where every visitor need to come into the country and submit their face and fingerprint. And because of that, they mandate NIST to evaluate biometric technology. So since then, NIST has been very actively evaluating biometric technology based first fingerprint, and then the recent years, face and iris. Those are the 3 major ones. They have not done the other, like DNA or blood or why not, but at least the 3 major ones they are evaluating. These are just some of the tests they have done. And they, the last 3 years, they really focusing on facial recognition between the bias study, the twin study, and the presentation attacks. And morphing quality is also a new one that they're evaluating. So morph is the morphing, how to detect morphing, the threat of manipulating the images and basically fuse 2 face picture together and end up 2 people can access the same account because the morphing can fool the algorithm. And of course, FIDO, we are in the FIDO conference here, that also have certification for biometric component as well. And they measure different things, performance and so forth. There are other, ISO also have one for liveness with iBeta, so is FIDO. All right, I'm gonna talk about the next area of how to evaluate a biometric algorithm, go beyond our accuracy. So accuracy is in the middle, front and center, but there are other areas where I would say if you're gonna evaluate a biometric and pick one to use in your authentication system, not just the built-in device one, I don't count those are more convenience, but you're looking at a real biometric solution for onboarding or authentication after. There are other factors. So in my book is because biometric comes with so much baggage, privacy concern or pushback and biases and all that, you want to pick a biometrics, at least a vendor, developer, that care more than just sell you an SDK on the cheap. So being transparent about how they are performed, how the accuracy evolve over time. It's not one and done. You know, accuracy that we did 5 years ago, it's like a lifetime ago. With AI, every 18 months you have a new generation algorithm coming onto the market. And experience of the vendor, how much they care about ethics, security. We talk about safety by design by the keynote speaker yesterday. And the robustness of the design implementation. And that leads to me giving the mic to Allyson because robustness means, my CTO said it very well, it has to work for everyone in any places. So that's the motto. And robustness come in many forms, and accessibility is different. Usability and accessibility is different, one of them. So I'm going to give the mic to Allyson.
Yeah, thank you. So again, as we stated earlier, this friction zone that we have displayed on the slide has to be addressed through two lenses, one of which is the technical lens that Teresa just talked about, and the other is the UX side, or the non-technical. You can debate whether it's non-technical, but anyway, so really, in order to eliminate friction, we need to keep users at the core of our product. And we can do this through adopting a user-centered or a holistic design approach. And the user-centered design framework is founded on a few fundamental principles, one of which is user testing and evaluation. And user testing, user research, user evaluation allows us to really better understand our users and validate our design choices. Another way we can gain insight from our users is through integrated feedback portals. And really regularly collecting data and feedback in real time helps us uncover these friction points. A focus on accessibility is also really, really important. It allows us to streamline our products and really create an equitable solution for all of our users. Again, accessibility, very, very important. And an example of this is providing more than one biometric option for authentication, as well as one non-biometric option. And this really allows us to move away from or help biometric-specific edge cases and really provide that fallback. And then finally, in order to adopt a user-centered design framework, we are trying, and we really need to ground in a user-centered and a user experience culture. And we can create this culture by integrating user-centered design and UX into our project frameworks and our development process. So again, a key component of the user-centered design process is research and evaluation. And by developing this culture of research, we can ensure that our user remains central to our product so that we can uncover and eliminate their pain points. And again, we can do this through incorporating user integrated feedback to track, measure, and uncover operational issues. And some of these are in-app surveys, feedback widgets, embedded analytics. Also, we really need to be able to, and we should be encouraging sharing results across all of our departments. And to do that, we really have to have a research framework in place and a structure that allows us to disseminate this research. And all of this takes investment from our company. So when we do these things, we're able to gather the research required to understand our users and how they interact with our products, and ultimately in an effort to create a more frictionless experience. So again, accessibility. So ensuring usability, system usability really requires us to meet the needs of all of our users. And again, remember, users are at the core of our product. And this doesn't really mean necessarily just meeting the accessibility requirements outlined by standards organizations like W3C, but also humanizing our conversations around accessibility and recognizing that usability and accessibility are one and the same. And when we strive to increase usability for everyone, we realize that inclusive design really drives innovation and requires us to think outside the box. And it can create new and oftentimes robust solutions. It also increases efficiency by encouraging us to streamline our products. Legend says that SMS text message was developed for the deaf community. Other people say it wasn't, but regardless, the deaf community really drove us to adopt SMS texting, and texting is a widely used way to communicate today. And lastly, accessibility is an equalizer. Again, it provides an equitable solution for everybody. And a few ways we can create these solutions are, once again, by providing more than one biometric option for authentication or validation, as well as one non-biometric option, such as a password or PIN. And granting users choices, again, eliminates these edge cases where a user is temporarily or permanently unable to authenticate with whichever method that you're providing, whichever biometric you're providing. And I didn't mention this, but accessibility and different use cases can be temporary or permanent. You can think of temporary issues such as not being able to authenticate your voice in a loud or noisy environment, or maybe a really quiet one. So again, it's not always permanent, but sometimes temporary situations that you're wanting to bypass by providing multiple modalities and ultimately a non-biometric fallback. And lastly, really our efforts to adopt a user-centered design process, conduct research, focus on accessibility, to streamline our process, all of this really can only happen when we integrate user experience into our deployment plan. And we can do this by embedding UX in our project framework and ensuring those frameworks are flexible. So this means getting UX involved early, typically 2 weeks ahead of the first sprint, and keeping them involved in all of your workflow ceremonies. And this integration process really requires training and education for cross-functional roles. And that training can help everybody understand the user-centered design process, UX, the importance of all of these things. And when we successfully embed UX into our framework, members of the UX teams are able to successfully test live products. Again, that's getting us the research that we need to keep users at the core, and ultimately uncover painful friction points, which is the goal of all of this. So yeah, so reducing friction really requires constant iteration in all of our products, as well as our technical and our non-technical strategies, both of which we've talked about today. And when we address all of these areas, when we address inequality, biometric inequality, accuracy, and when we invest in algorithmic excellence on the technical side, and when we develop a strong research strategy, when we integrate UX, when we invest in accessibility on the user experience side, we're really able to move closer towards a successful biometric solution for all of us and to reduce that friction. Yeah, so thank you for listening.
Thank you, Allyson.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. I don't see any questions online. So,
Is that clear? Oh, no, Mike
we
has
have
one.
one.
Yes, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
I know you know this, but I thought I would just observe that error rates, both false positives and negatives, are part of it, but there's also a UX component to it, which is how hard is it for the person to do the biometric authentication in the first place? And there's actually probably a trade-off between how many times I'm going to try to have to do my fingerprint and how bad a data sample you're willing to actually accept, which increases the error rates. But depending upon what your goal is, you know, letting me get into my phone may be more important than making it perfect such that my twin couldn't do it.
Correct. It's the balancing point, and failure to capture is definitely the beginning upstream of the accuracy downstream, right? If you can't capture, you can't match. If you capture a wrong sample, you have bad result, garbage in, garbage out. So definitely acquisition is a critical starting point of your biometric process, and you need to think that through in the rollout consideration. But a lot of time, I think we say, well, it's in the phone. That's the reader. Who cares? It matters. You need to take those capture points into account. Oh, there's one in the back. Oh.
I was just going to say, I've been doing a bunch of construction work. I'm building my wife a barn, and my fingerprints are pretty much destroyed.
That's why we give you the fallback option, Mike.
Yeah,
just
I
for
understand.
You. Yes.
All right, we have one question from online. What are the challenges in testing biometric friction points?
What are the challenges? Oh, that's so many. One, I would say, in our experience, you need to replicate. Replicating them, it's one. If you find a fringe use case, you can't replicate it, then you don't understand how to really solve it. And be aware and be parted up. So challenges, really be aware of the challenges that's really in the field, and be able to replicate and test and resolve it. other side is build that into account, let the customer know when you roll it out that actually you're gonna have friction and you're gonna have a testing period to resolve it. It doesn't work right off the gate, right off the bat. I think that those are the expectation challenges.
Just a couple of comments first. Thank you for the presentation. I have been dealing with biometrics for many, many years because I ran data centers and had to do hand geometry, fingerprint readers, or in the early days. And so it's really encouraging to see biometrics entering the mainstream, as we all have seen, and all of this research. So just thank you. I didn't really have a question except to say thank you for the research. I know there's a lot of particulars in your research, and you're just scratching the surface in the presentation today, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, that actually concludes. We're out of time now, I'm afraid. But thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you, Allyson. We'll start back up again in 5 minutes when we talk about the UX design system.